we've spent a certain amount of time relearning about Esther and the king, Achashverosh, and Yael, the Jewish woman, or some say she was not Jewish, but a Kenite, Kuf Yud Nun Yud, which is a different people that were allied with the Jews, like the Druze of modern day northern Israel are a different people allied with Israel. So we've learned about how she lured Sisera, the general, to his death using the honeypot lure. And although there are some who contend that she did not actually physically connect with him, the majority, very strong majority opinion is that she did, and that it was several times, 7 times. We learned all of that. So we've learned about how sex was used by this woman to save the Jewish people during wartime against a general of King Yael of Canaan, Canaanite, and how in the same way Esther saved the Jewish people. And we didn't quite make this distinction, but Esther was involuntary. She was pulled by the king in a beauty contest. She had to be part of the contest, had to participate, no choice, was chosen, had to be the queen, had to make the king happy, or she would be executed. And that's not theoretical, because that king had just killed Vashti. And then, whereas she was involuntary, there's the slight distinction that Yael was voluntary. She called Sisera, who was fleeing the Jewish army. All his men had been destroyed in battle, just wiped out. He was the only survivor, and he was running for his life. And she sort of opened the door to her tent. I don't know if they call it a door, but the opening to the tent, and she beckoned him in. So had she stayed out of the picture, he would have kept running. And what would have become of him? And who knows? Would they have caught up with him with someone else have beckoned him? I don't know. No one does. But she was more voluntary. She had a plan. She knew what was going on, either as a Jew that she had a mission, or as an ally to the Jews, she had that mission to take that man and kill him. And she voluntarily brought herself into a sexual situation, which would be the way. By contrast, Esther did not want to go that route. She was forced. And then in chapter 4 of Megillat Esther, Mordechai, her uncle, puts her in a position where you have got to do whatever you've got to do. And he doesn't tell her to be sexual, but you have got to approach the king, and you have got to figure out a way to get that king to be aware that there's a plot out there to kill the Jews. And he signed off on it. And he may tell you he doesn't know about it. Maybe he does, probably does, maybe he doesn't. And you've got to do something. And her strategy was to use sex. Now, it's not clear whether she slept with him for that, or whether she implied something and implied that she had an affair going on with Haman. This idea that she asked that, may I bring Haman with me to the party that I'm throwing for you? Only Haman, no one else. And then I'm going to have a follow-up party like the next day. And he's so excited, just he and his wife and drinking. And she said, I'd like to bring Haman. And to what degree did that cause him to think there's something going on there? And this idea of a threesome, he wasn't into a threesome. And so she used something, and regardless, the very first time she met him was ba'erev hi ba'a uvaboker hi shava, that he had a nationwide beauty contest, and another woman was sent every night to his bedroom to spend the night with him. And it is implied, inferred, that something went on that way. And she was married to him. and she had no choice. And the Talmud refers to that situation as karka olam, that she was like a piece of property, literally real estate, a piece of land. She was passive with no choice. She had no input in the matter. He treated her basically like a piece of land or territory. And that's how the Gemara refers to her, as she was karka olam. In other words, she didn't do anything. Yael did something. Esther, did she do something? It seems not. But did she lure? It seems, but did she do? We don't know. But we are left to assume what we assume. And then thirdly, we learned about the Midianite women. That was a reversal of the procedure. In that one, instead of a Jewish woman trying to save the Jewish people by bringing a man and seducing him, it was a foreign nation, the Midianites, who sent their women to seduce the Jewish men. And this was a third instance with a third kind of game plan. Yael's game plan was to kill Sisera on the spot. Esther's game plan was to survive and gain the trust of King Achashverosh, and ultimately to induce him to save the Jews, get rid of Haman. And the Midianites had a different game plan. Under the direction of Bilam, that prophet, they sought to turn God's wrath against the Jewish people. That God apparently loved the Jewish people. That was the prophecy of Bilam, that it's a Matovu o Halakha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your homes, O Israel, that God looks upon you and he blesses you because you are a people who are sexually modest. You don't fool around with people with whom you should not fool around. Every person, every family, and every home keeps its doors shut and doesn't look into the next home and doesn't improperly socialize. And we are sending these women for the specific purpose of getting you to sin, in order to get your God to turn against you and stop giving you special protection. And so we learned what they did, how they set up their own stores or tents in the marketplace where they'd have an elderly woman outside offering men to come inside and check out the wares, wares, in the store, and they would come in and see a beautiful woman who would beckon them and bring them to sin. And there was, in the most brazen and worst situation, you had Zimri ben Salu, the chief of the nation of the tribe of Shimon, who openly defied Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher, and the people around him, took Cosby, Batsur, the princess of Midian, and brought her into the tent. And but for the fact that Pinchas speared them both in the act, and we learned all about that. So we now have our sources from which we can learn and from which we can apply certain principles. Now for this, there's one more. I've created a chart for you to give you a sort of a sense of some of the legal issues on the table. First and foremost is the concept of, because the question we're getting back into now is whether it ever really is permitted to send a woman or man to engage in forbidden sex with someone that's not permitted to him or her for some greater purpose of saving Jewish lives. Esther saving lives, Yael saving lives, and the Midianites, their story. And there are certain principles that come together. Let's look at them. Okay. Let me just be sure. Very important. I need to optimize also. Very important. Optimize today. Okay. Here we go. There are the following issues. One, Pikuach Nefesh. Pikuach Nefesh is you can, quote unquote, violate any law in the Torah to save lives. Classic examples, even really, really important laws that may not be broken, may be compromised for Pikuach Nefesh to save lives. Examples, Shabbat. What's more important than Shabbat? Nothing. Shabbat is the holy of holies. Many people don't realize that it's more holy than Yom Kippur. There are many people who make it their business to stop off in shul at least once a year in Yom Kippur, at least for Kol Nidre. But they would, and I'm not going after them now, not at all. Just want to make a point that they would never go to shul on Shabbat, unless it's for a bar mitzvah, maybe for a yortzeit. But they wouldn't miss Yom Kippur. And that derives in great measure from living among non-Jews and seeing how they treat their theology. We don't realize the degree to which we as Jews are impacted by the societies in which we live. We don't imagine that. I first came to realize it in 1987, so that's 38 years ago. I was a rabbi in Woodland Hills, Beit Midrash Woodland Hills. And I saw there's a certain number of Jews from North African Arab countries, Sephardic Jews, we call that group Eidot HaMizrach, the Eastern Jews. Unlike the Sephardic Jews who hail from continental Spain or Portugal or Holland, these are the Jews, the Sephardim we know, most often from Syria, Yemen, Morocco, Egypt, Libya, Sephardic Jews, Iran, etc. No offense meant if I skipped your country. So I saw there are a lot of Jews in Woodland Hills and the San Fernando Valley, and some of them were going to conservative and reform temples. And I met with some, not in a group setting, but I would talk to people. I'd bump into people at the supermarket. I'd bump into people elsewhere. I would ask them, I'd say, you're from Eidot HaMizrach. You're from the Jews of the Arab world. You're the holiest of the holy. You're more holy than the Ashkenazic Jews. And I'm an Ashkenazic Jew, but I call it as I see it. You don't have Reform Judaism. You never had Reform and Conservative Judaism or any of those other perversions of Judaism. You have only Orthodox Judaism. And you're in one of two groups. You're an Orthodox Jew who observes, or you're an Orthodox Jew who does not observe. But you do not create the joke and the game of Reform and Conservative. For 2,000 years, you've been true to the truest Judaism. And Sephardim are the best. Sephardim are the best. The only reason they don't have that reputation is that the Ashkenazim have power. The Ashkenazim went to create the modern state of Israel before the Sephardim got there. The Ashkenazim came from Russia with the assassination of Alexander II, the Tsar, and the anti-Semitism drove a massive immigration from 1881 to 1914. In the aftermath of Herzl, who was Austrian, also Ashkenazi, and the Sephardim really did not come until the mass exile by the Arab countries in the 1940s. As the state of Israel started to take shape, Arab countries foolishly started to expel all their Jews, and they threw out 900,000 Sephardic Jews. Had they not done that, theoretically, but for God's miracles anyway, but in the natural world, had they not done that, Israel would have had a million fewer people and would not have had enough of a population. But God would have been there for miracles. Well, maybe that was the miracle, that the idiots comprising the Arab world sent 1 million Jews. They thought they're punishing us. They sent 1 million Jews to populate Israel. Okay. But by the time the 1 million Sephardim got there, the Ashkenazim already had the reins of power. And therefore, Sephardim have spent half a century trying to gain their rightful place. And they are in the process of doing so, but they're still catching up. And it is a It's one of many secrets that we don't talk about as much, and it's gotten a lot better, but it has more to go. All the prime ministers have been Ashkenazim. Just about all the presidents of Israel have been Ashkenazim, except for one who hailed from Spain, Yitzhak Navon. The Sephardim, they always give them some ministries to be ministers, but it's really a thing that time will tell. And that's part of why Menachem Begin created a revolution when he got elected in 1977. Because the Sephardim hate the Labor Party. They hate and despise the left, beautiful people of the Ashkenazic left. They blame them, the socialists, the kibbutzniks, the labor, for having created a nation, an infrastructure that was racist and kept the black or dark-skinned Jews, who make up the majority of Israel, from power. And to this day, they hate labor. And what happened was Menachem Begin, albeit an Ashkenazi hailing from Poland, drew together, they knew more than an Israeli. To the labor left, they call themselves Israelis. Begin said, I'm not an Israeli, I'm a Jew who is in Israel. And I'm proud to be Israeli, but I consider myself a Jew versus the Ashkenazi kibbutznim. We're not Jews, we're Israelis. We're not that culture. So Sephardim became part of that. Back to our story. So what I found in Woodland Hills in 1987 was all these Sephardim, and I would talk to them, why don't you come to my shul? We're a very small, I just got here. We only have 9 members. So part of my job is to get a minyan. I'll take anybody. I used to have to stand every Friday night, Kabbalat Shabbat. Next door was a gas station. That was my job. That's what happens when you're not the rabbi of a big, big shul. My job was, we count, not gonna be 9. Rabbi, go out to the gas station, get me a Jew. Alan, the president, used to say. I'd stand there like a shikingel, S-H-I-K, Shin Yud Kuf, which is sound, a shikingel, like to send a Jew to do something as a messenger boy. And I'd stop each person pumping gas. Are you Jewish? In those days, you could do, now with the Zionism, but, and I would always find a Jew. And I'd pull in a Jew, I'd say, we need somebody for Kaddish. And they'd be happy to be counted. In those days, 40 years ago, they were willing to say, yeah, I'm a Jew. And I'd get them for 15 minutes. So anyway, I talked to the Sephardim, whoever I bumped into. What in the world are you doing in a Reform temple? Or a conservative? And if you go only once a year in Yom Kippur, which also is crazy, but why there? And they would explain, because we don't know any Orthodox temple. And I would start bringing them in. And there were only 9 of us living in a converted house, Orthodox conversion. And so it was a converted house, and the conservative reform had big, beautiful buildings. And so what I did was I offered the Sephardim in Woodland Hills, how's about if I set up a separate minyan for you guys? So we have enough bedrooms in the house. You don't have to daven with our minyan. Have your own minyan in another room, a Sephardic minyan. And they went for that. Not everybody. It was cheesy versus a big Reform temple. But we got 10, grew to 20, grew to 30. We got Sephardim. We had more Sephardim than Ashkenazim. On Yom Kippur, and as the rabbi of the shul, I always made it my business, though I davened with the Ashkenazim, to pop my head in once or twice during the davening at the Sephardic, to just step in there and make a presence. The rabbi is here also. I'll never forget the shock that I encountered when I did that. My first Yom Kippur, we had a lot of Sephardim on Yom Kippur. We got about 100. Because, people come out of the woodwork for Yom Kippur. People that don't come all year. And I went in there and I heard their Kol Nidre. Their Kol Nidre is not our Kol Nidre. And if there's one thing that Ashkenazic Jews know, it's Kol Nidre. Kol Nidre, Yasarei, V'charamei, V'konamei, V'kinuye. And you know what I'm talking about. And Sephardim, it's like a whole different world. And I learned something very interesting. At that time, I was born in 53, at age 34. It took me age 34 to learn this. And when I brought this to the attention of rabbinic colleagues, just as I am to you, they said to me, by golly, you're right, and it never hit me either. The degree to which, living among Goyim, we adopt their religion, or we adopt their approach to religion. So, for example, if you listen to Ashkenazic music, it is very much like American music, British music, Western music, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. No, it's not the Beatles and Rolling Stones, but everyone knows that Shlomo Carlebach was deeply influenced by the Beatles and Rolling Stones and Elvis. And even though his songs are not Beatles, Rolling Stones, and Elvis, they are. He changed Jewish music under Western influences. And when you listen to Sephardic music, man, it's a whole different music. It sounds like Arab music because it's under Arab influences. And when you go into when a Sephardi goes into an Ashkenazic shul, they complain to me. It feels like going into a church. Okay, you have an Aron Kodesh instead of a big cross, and you have a Sefer Torah, and you have Sidurim in Hebrew, and Chumash, but it feels like church. And I tell them with a smile, and you know something, when I go into your shul, it feels like a mosque. I mean, B'kol HaKavod, I love you and you're my people, and I know it's the Holy of Holies. But yeah, it's like I walk in and I listen to the chanting, and it sounds like what a mosque sounds like on television. And when I hear your Kol Nidre, it doesn't sound like Yom Kippur. And it brought home to me, you know what? The Muslims had polygamy. For hundreds of years, they had multi-wives, and so did the Sephardim. And the Christians had monogamy, and so did the Jews. They changed under Christian influence. And it just goes on and on and on like that. It came to my attention how many aspects of our culture actually are reflections of the society in which we live. Okay. So, in the same way, as we start looking at Pikuach Nefesh and some other things and foundational principles in Judaism, there are many things that we have that are similar and that we share. And then there are foundational principles that go in a different direction. Let's take a look. The three inviolable sins. Shabbos. You are not allowed to break Shabbat. That's inviolable under no circumstances. But I'm going to lose $1,000 if I don't return this phone call. Then you lost $1,000. But I'm going to get fired. I work at a law firm and I have to be available to the partner. Then get fired, find a different law firm, or open your own practice. There's only one exception. The only exception is Pikuach Nefesh, to save a life. Rabbi, I've got to drive my wife to the hospital. She's in labor. Even though it's Shabbat, go to the hospital. Don't even ask me, just go. I have to do this to save a life on Shabbat. Do it. There are only 3 sins that you're not allowed to do to save a life. Same thing with kosher. Rabbi, I'm going to starve to death. I'm a soldier in the Tsar's army in Russia, and they only serve us non-kosher food. And if I only pork, and if I don't eat pork when they serve it, I literally am going to be emaciated and starve to death. They've drafted me for 15 years now, and it's going to be 15 years of pork. So eat the pork. Famous story of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, who told someone who asked him that, eat the pork, but don't suck the bones. But eat the pork. You're allowed to violate, and it's not even violating, but that's the word we're using. You're allowed to violate any law in Judaism to save lives, except for these 3. Yehareg v'al ya'avor. For these 3, you must be except being killed. Horeg, you should be killed. V'al ya'avor, and you should not trespass. Idolatry. If someone demands of you to worship a false religion, a false god, or be killed, that's what happened during the Crusades and the Inquisition. You have to submit to death. That's the halakha. You have to submit to death. Let's make it bigger. If somebody says to you, kill this person or I will kill you, so why is one person's blood redder than the other person's blood? Under the threat that you will be killed, if you don't kill the other one, then you must allow them to kill you. Obviously, fight for your life, do what you can to save your life, but don't let them, but you're not allowed to kill someone else to save yourself. You're allowed to kill the prospective murderer, killer. You're allowed to kill him. But if he says kill someone else, you're not allowed. And thirdly, sexual, giluy arayot. If someone says, I will kill you unless you rape this person right now, you're not allowed to do that. Or unless you do this homosexual act, or unless you do this act with a child, or any Torah forbidden sexual act, you must submit yourself to be killed. Now, the idolatry one, avodah zarah, clearly was very much what came in the times of the Crusades and the Inquisitions. And there were times, and there still are times, where horrific situations arose where someone would take a Jew and demand that that Jew kill another Jew, or that Jew will be killed. Maybe even an enemy of Israel, taking someone and saying, either you act as our double agent and assassinate the following person, or we will kill you. You're not allowed to assassinate that person. You must face being killed. Oops. Okay, that didn't work. So you must accept that. You must face being killed. Shafichu damim. And again, if they say you must do this sexual act, you would have to be killed. There are terribly perverted people out there, such as these South American gangs. And these South American gangs make demands of their own people just to get into the gang, often have to rape someone or do something horrific sexually. And in the same way, just forbidden. So this becomes a factor, halachically, in terms of honeypot. If under no circumstance are you allowed to engage in forbidden sexual activity, are you permitted to engage in giluy arayot if it's a honeypot lure aimed to save individuals, Jews, or the entirety of the Jewish people? And there are three levels of analysis. Are you allowed to engage in forbidden sex if it will save the life of an individual? How could that be? Again, it could be like these spy incidents we've been talking about, like Avishai Raviv. Okay, so he did not violate Jewish law. He was a Jew who married an Orthodox Jewish woman under Jewish law. So what he did was, both for him and the Shin Bet, the Shabak, it was unethical and sociologically immoral, but not religiously forbidden. And so with the other case we saw in the film the other day, and all the others that were not in the film, but other cases where Shabak, and that is the Shin Bet, as part of their deep state efforts, would get a Jew to marry some poor, unsuspecting Jewish woman, and she thinks the guy loves her, and he doesn't. He's just using her along the lines of what we talked about in the film on Tisha B'Av. But again, in those cases, halachically, they were permitted. The women were not married. They were single, looking to get married. the men were Jews, portraying themselves as Orthodox, certainly observing Orthodox law in marrying. So that issue is not exactly this issue. But is a woman allowed or a man allowed to have sex, forbidden sex, or let's say adulterous sex, where the Shabbat agent is married to a man or woman and now goes to have sex with someone else, or has sex with someone who is married and deliberately is causing that person perhaps to engage in adultery? Now, we've learned in the past that adultery is when a married woman has sex with someone other than her husband. That technically under Halakha, it is deeply forbidden, but not adultery, of the 10 commandments, of the 10 pronouncements level. If someone has sex with an unmarried person, so we've said, like, not that Bill Clinton is Jewish or anything, but just to make it easier to describe, like a Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky is not adultery if Clinton were Jewish, because Monica Lewinsky was a single woman. But if the Clintons were Jewish, and if someone had sex with Hillary, and if she were Jewish, properly married to Jewish Bill Clinton, if they were, that would be adultery, because that would be with a married woman. So in the case of the Shin Bet honeypots, I don't know that they even care. But the stories and incidents we covered in the Tisha B'Av movie, the deep state was sending men to marry unmarried women, properly according to law. So that's not. But are you allowed in a honeypot situation as a Shin Bet agent, let's say, to have sex with, let's say, a man with a married woman? That's outright adultery. Or a woman or a man with an unmarried woman, where it's not adultery, but if she's not Jewish, or if she is Jewish, but it's, and then a woman with an unmarried man, a married man, are you allowed to save a life? Because we've already decided there are 3 inviolable sins. No way can you save your life by serving a false god, including Christianity. No way can you save, as in the Crusades and Inquisition. That's why people submitted to death. No way can you save your life by killing someone else. Kill them, assassinate them, and what I'm telling you is we have a deeper discussion on the subject of sexual. That's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to take a look at that a little more carefully. And I'm telling you in advance, there is a difference in the analysis if it's to save only one or a few people, or is it to save many Jews, Rov Yehudim, or is it to save Klal Yisrael, the entirety of the Jewish people? Different analyses. Who is Esther trying to save? One person? In trying to take down Haman, she wasn't just trying to save one, or even many, but the entirety of the Jewish people. Klal Yisrael, who lived in 127 provinces under King Achashverosh, because there was a blanket royal decree by King Achashverosh that Megillah tells us several times went 127 provinces in all the different languages. So if she could take down Haman and reverse the decree, she was trying to do it on behalf of Klal Yisrael. What about Yael? When she went after the Sisera, the general, was it to save one person? No. She wasn't in danger. She could have stayed in her tent. He wasn't much of a danger. His entire army died, were killed and slaughtered in battle. Was it to save many Jews? Not really. He was running back. Was it to save the entirety of the Jewish people? The rabbis say yes. But he's only one. And he's running for his dear life to get out of the country. He is running back. It's like the reason that Netanyahu does not want to stop with Hamas yet, because there's that understanding that it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop until they stop, and they will never stop until they are stopped. That's just the way it goes. We're not happy about it, but that's the way it goes. And because that's the way it goes, Sisera was running back to Yavin, the king of Canaan, with a plan to raise a new army and try all over again to wipe out the Jewish nation. He wasn't going after individuals, and he wasn't just going after one town or one community. It was the Canaanites under King Yavin, determined to wipe out the state of Israel, in those days called the country of Israel. So in both cases, Yael and Esther, the analysis devolves, they're trying to save the Jewish people. Third question, is the agent a male or a female? Do you see why that's an issue? I'm going to try to say it, realizing, first of all, I'm an Orthodox rabbi, and even if I weren't, I have an obligation to be Torah respectful and talk like an Orthodox rabbi. Hit the wrong button. And talk like an Orthodox rabbi. And so I've got to say this in a very careful, I'm going to add another one now because I left one thing out. Let me just add this, take a second, it's important. All right. We'll deal with the Roman numerals later. Okay, save that. Is the agent male or female? And I've got to be careful, but let me make this point. Let me say it this way. Hopefully I say it the right way. And let me actually go off the screen here. Let's go off the screen here. Take this off the screen. Okay. For a man to completely fulfill and actualize his honeypot assignment by the Shin Bet or whatever, it is impossible for a man to complete that assignment and that act, no matter how much he despises the woman he has been assigned to get. It is impossible to actualize that without experiencing at some point at the end an element of pleasure. It's just not possible otherwise to do the last part of the act. It's just not possible. By contrast, a woman literally can hold herself out sexually under assignment of the Shin Bet to lure a man into the act, and even upon the act's completion, it is thoroughly possible that the woman will emerge disgusted by what just happened without having experienced even an inch, an aspect of pleasure. For those who live in I remember as a boy, ABC TV, Channel 7 in New York, had a weatherman, and the idiot once made a joke about rape. And without repeating it, he was fired 2 minutes after he made the joke. He wasn't even on the news team as they had the closing credits. They had already taken his name off the credits. And his so-called joke was premised on the idea that if a woman's going to be raped, she may as well. Now, is it everybody went bazonko and he got fired, etc. But there were, and still probably are, a certain amount of men out there who don't begin to get it. But sensible people understand, all women, And sensible men, not just sensitive, but sensible men understand that a woman being raped, or a woman who even is forced to lure a man to that act can go on with the moment gaining no pleasure and just being absolutely disgusted. And so the rabbis refer to that woman as karka olam, a piece of land. Obviously, she's not a piece of land. She's a human being and a person. But the man who did what he did can be understood as having treated her like a piece of land. Whereas when a male secret agent does that act, it can't be completed unless he does, however he reaches that point. That's as far as, okay. So that's going to be part of the analysis too. Are you allowed to send a Jew to a honey trap situation? In this case, a man with a woman, and the man is the agent. So number one, is he saving only one person, or a lot of Jews, or Klal Yisrael, the entirety of Jewish people? Is he a man or a woman? Well, we just said he's a man. And that's part of an analysis where they may come back and say, a man is never allowed to be sent as such an agent, whereas perhaps a woman may be. So you can see from what I'm leading up to, there's a careful legal analysis that is going to end up somewhere around, well, if it's to save the entire Jewish people, Klal Yisrael, and if it is a woman, and then finally, is she married or he married? So you want someone who's not married so that there's not an issue of adultery or a man cheating on his wife. It's not cheating, but now there's one more thing I'll add to the list for next time. In Jewish law, if a married couple, if the woman cheats on her husband and then comes back and says to the husband, I did this, I regret it with all my heart, and the husband says, I totally forgive you. According to Jewish law, if a married Jewish woman cheats on the husband while married, he must divorce her on the spot. No choice. Even though she is regretful, he believes her and forgives her, and he doesn't want to live without her, he has no choice. If she did it willingly. But if she was unwilling, let's say a rape, she tells him that she was raped, and she can stay married. They stay married. Jewish law does not get involved in that. It's a horrible thing that happened, and she does not have to leave the marriage for against her will having been violated. But again, if she willingly got violated, so it was not even violated, as a married woman, and then the next morning realizes, oh my God, it's an automatic. So the question becomes, if we have a married woman, but he's been sent to save Klal Yisrael, the entirety of the Jewish people, and she is married, and she really doesn't want to do this, but it will save the entirety of the nation. And Shabbat has convinced her only she can be the one. No one can do it but she. So the rabbis have a debate, an analysis. Does she have to divorce? Does her husband have to divorce her afterwards? On the one hand, she did it willingly. On the other hand, do we say, well, it's not exactly willingly. It's against her will, but there was no one else. Denise and I located a really fascinating mini series we've been watching. I don't know if you've seen it, and I always hesitate as a rabbi to recommend anything on TV because it turns out there's one scene I forget about where we look the other way and I forgot about it. And then someone says, Rabbi, I'm surprised you recommended this because there was this scene and I watched it because the rabbi said so. And I'll think, oh my God, what did I do? So I don't viewer discretion advised. We saw Tehran. It's on Apple Plus TV, on Apple TV, Apple Plus TV. There are 2 seasons, 8 episodes each. And there's a 3rd season that now has finished in Israel, and it's coming this fall to Apple TV in America. And the premise of it, very exciting. I mean, really, very exciting. The premise is, and it's written before this recent war. The premise is an Iranian Jewish woman made Aliyah, and she's a Shabak agent, a Mossad agent. Shabak is inside Israel like the FBI, and Mossad is outside the borders like the CIA. And she's a Mossad agent, and the Mossad, because she's Iranian, speaks Persian with a bit of an accent, but speaks Persian and looks Persian, etc. So the Mossad sends her to Persia, to Iran, for the purpose of sabotaging the Iranian electric system in order to briefly shut down their radar. Israel has, in this storyline, 5 fighter jets waiting right outside the borders of Iran. And as soon as they get word that the radar is down, they will be flying over Iran and taking out the Iranian nuclear sites. So there wasn't the premise that there's Fordo, which would require an American bombing, etc., etc. It's a very prescient series. It predicts a lot of things. It's almost like I'm surprised Israel did not ask them not to do the show, because it gives a lot of ideas that it looks like the Mossad took ideas from the show. So anyway, it goes on for 2 seasons, and there's a 3rd season coming up. And basically, as things go wrong, it has to go wrong, or they couldn't make 2 seasons. It would be 1 episode. As things go wrong and it extends the story, she ends up having to live in Tehran for a while and figure out how to survive. They want to get her back to Israel, but she needs to survive. And then certain ideas arise that maybe before she gets brought back, maybe she still can take down the radar and they still can finish the job. And lots more. That's enough for me. So in order for her to live in Iran for 2 seasons, there are honeypot things going on. At some point or other, as things unfold, they decide they want her to have a relationship that goes all the way with this person and then with that person, etc., etc. And it's really this story, these halachot, where the questions arise: is she a male or a female? She's female. Is it to save one person, a lot of Jews, or Klal Yisrael? She's trying to take out Iranian nukes. So that's Klal Yisrael, the entirety of the Jewish people. Even though it's the entirety of Israel, someone can say, yeah, but there'll still be Jews in England and America. That is regarded as the entirety of the Jewish people, because the center of the Jewish world is Israel, and the rest really doesn't matter. In halakhic terms, we have to face that if you live outside of Israel, that's not where Jewish history is being written. Jewish history, that chapter ended already. The rest of our lives is a footnote in Jewish history if we're outside of Israel. America is a footnote. American Jews like to think the chapter is being written here. It was in the 1960s. It's no longer being written here. American Jews, right now, Jewish history in America is about hoping that the Democrats don't change everything and force Israel to XYZ, and Mamdani doesn't get elected. It's pathetic what's going on now. Got enough politics. So, in the TV show, she's trying to save Klal Yisrael. She's a woman. She is not married. So that's helpful. But because it's a secular program, they don't highlight that. But it makes it more doable. So we've done a lot of halachic background now. In the time we still have, and I know we're a bit short on time, but let's take out 15 minutes and we'll stop at that. The 15 minutes, now that you have the halachic legal background of Esther, Yael, Sisera, and the Midianite women, now that you have the fundamental rules that I charted for you, I'm going to ask you, bear with me 15 minutes or 13 minutes, very interesting. I'm going to show you a 13-minute segment on 60 Minutes and the Australian 60 Minutes. So they speak a language that with the captions is like English. Rather than my telling you the story, they tell you the story in a much better way. It's the Mordechai Vanunu story. Here we go. And that'll be it for tonight. But it's really, this is key because the next part of what we're doing is the Mordechai Vanunu story. Here we go. It's very interesting stuff. And it's real. All right, so just got to get to the right tab. Pardon me, just a moment. I got to get to the tab, and the tab is, yeah, that one. That one. Okay, gotcha. I have some more video, but that'll be next week. Just 12 minutes and 27 seconds.
And betrayal.
Let me get the captions, because the guy's speaking Australian. So that's like, oh, we got the captions up. Okay. So here we go.
This is a tale of intrigue, state secrets, undercover operations, a sexy seductress, and betrayal. A classic spy story. The story of Mordechai Vanunu, the insider who had the guts to reveal the truth. The proof perfect that Israel produces weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons. It begins back in 1986 and spans the globe with a stop.
Okay, so you see this is going to be pro-Vanunu. We are anti-Vanunu. So it's interesting how you pick words. He has the guts to expose the truth. The other way to say it is the guy who is a traitor to his people. Anyway, no more interruptions, I hope.
Over here in Australia. Then there's Israel's revenge. The alluring female spy, the honey trap, the kidnapping, and the trial that sees Vanunu jailed as a traitor. Well, now he's technically a free man, but Mordechai Vanunu is still very much a prisoner of the state. Here at St. George's Cathedral in Jerusalem, Mordechai Vanunu enjoys ringing the bells. It's part of his daily routine now that he's a free man. Well, sort of free. From here, he also enjoys looking down on Israel's Supreme Court, the one that sentenced him to 18 years. He likes the thought that his ringing of these Christian bells might disturb the Jewish judges.
I sacrificed my freedom because I knew if I will not do it, no one else will do it.
There's no sound for a moment.
They had nuclear weapons.
Okay, just for a moment.
To many people, what Vanunu did was both brave and heroic.
Not to us.
There's something...
In fact, he's such a traitor that I believe he converted from Judaism to Christianity.
Crazy about this world. We went to war with Iraq because we thought they had nuclear weapons. But Israel, we've known that they've had them for the past 18 years, ever since Vanunu told us. That's the Negev desert, and that's the Dimona reactor where Vanunu worked. The signs on the fence say no photography, and I'm not inclined to push our luck at the moment. Vanunu's story could have been ripped from the pages of a spy thriller. By the age of 31, Vanunu had been a technician for 9 years at Israel's Dimona nuclear installation and privy to the country's best-kept secret.
I knew exactly what does it mean to produce plutonium.
6 levels below ground, the Israelis had built a plutonium reprocessing plant, a nuclear bomb factory. To this day, Israel still refuses to acknowledge its existence. But 18 years ago, in spectacular fashion, Vanunu blew their cover.
What I call in English whistleblower, to inform the world about Israel's nuclear secret, because no one speak or no one report exactly what's going there.
In 1986, Vanunu duped Israel's vaunted security apparatus and smuggled a camera into the secret Dimona plant. His photographs exposed the world's greatest nuclear cover-up. What he showed was that Israel's nuclear arms program was far bigger and much more powerful than anyone had even dreamt possible.
Enough material every year for 10 bombs.
Vanunu fled Israel and set out across the world with his super secret on 2 rolls of unexposed film in his backpack. He travelled through Europe and Asia and ended up in Australia, where he converted to Christianity in a King's Cross church. Then, together with a friend, he touted his story.
We started with the bulletin, and then we went to Herald at morning, something like this.
Sydney Morning Herald.
Sydney Morning Herald, another newspaper. No one was enthusiastic to do the story.
And so Vanunu took the photos to Britain and the Sunday Times newspaper, where they realised the immense importance of the information he had. But by now, the Israelis had got wind of what Vanunu was up to, and they were after him. They set a trap with the kind of bait sure to snare a young, lonely, single man wandering the streets of still swinging London.
I bought a cigarette and I saw an American woman standing there, buying also a cigarette. I look at her, she look at me. We didn't talk.
Tell me, what was the look you exchanged with this woman?
Looking at her eyes, she looking at me.
You were attracted to her?
Yes, she looked interesting, a beautiful woman.
She was beautiful?
Yeah. My target was to find someone friendly, because I was alone.
She said her name was Cindy, and according to the Sunday Times, this is her. You took the initiative to, forgive the colloquialism, to pick up this lady.
Yes.
You did it.
If she had tried to pick me up, then I would have suspected her. But if I took the initiative, I'm not suspecting her.
She was dragging you into her trap.
No, I was already in her trap.
You know the term in the trade, don't you? She was a honeypot.
Yes.
Vanunu was hooked. Worse, he suspected nothing when Cindy suggested a dalliance in Rome. But of course, it was a trap. It was a 40-minute drive from Rome airport to a suburban house. Vanunu says she wouldn't stop kissing him. And these were his last moments as a free man.
When I entered the house, the door opened and immediately jumped on me 2 people, and one kicked me in the stomach and I collapsed. Another one jumped on me, put his hand on my mouth, silencing me. Another woman came and injected me, and then I lost my conscience.
Come the next weekend, the Sunday Times had no idea the kidnapped Vanunu was being secretly shipped to Israel, and they went ahead with their bombshell story. At first, the Israeli government simply lied. They denied they had anything to do with his disappearance. They fessed up eventually and said they had charged him with espionage and treason.
Kidnapping is a crime, isn't it?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean exactly what I say. Kidnapping is a crime.
Not of your own citizen if they commit crimes against your own state.
To this day, the Israeli government defends its actions. Yuval Steinitz is chairman of the Defense Committee in Israel's parliament.
Well, is the answer yes or no? Are you allowed to kidnap?
No, I'm not under investigation. I made it extremely clear that a state, and especially a state under such existential threat like Israel,
is
allowed to defend itself.
I'm simply asking you if you consider you're allowed to kidnap.
From a moral point of view, of course.
From a legal point of view?
I don't know.
It was Vanunu himself who craftily exposed the details of his abduction. Surreptitiously, he wrote and concealed the basic facts on the palm of his hand, and at the critical moment flashed it to the media as he was driven to trial. Hijacked in Rome, Italy, 30th of September 1986. British Airways Flight 504. He was convicted of espionage and treason and sentenced to 18 years in jail.
I felt like they judged me, sentenced me as a killer. But I didn't kill anyone. At that time, I felt very, very bad. I felt how all the world abandoned me and no one can do anything. Very, very disappointed.
11.5 years of his sentence were spent in solitary confinement. Since his release last April, Vanunu has attempted a normal life. He swims every day at a hotel pool and practices his Christian faith. But he's not a free man. He cannot leave Israel. He's forbidden to approach an airport or to go closer than 250 meters to an embassy. And he's forbidden to talk to foreigners. To this, he says,
Now, you're flouting that rule, that instruction, by talking to me. Do you risk going back into jail?
In some way, I'm taking the risk, but I concluded that this restriction from the beginning was wrong, unreasonable, impossible to implement.
Justify stopping him talking to me.
Oh, this is completely justified.
It's what they did in the Soviet Union or in apartheid South Africa.
No, this is very unfair parallel. I tell you why.
It's an exact parallel, sir.
You want to interview me or yourself? I have my own opinion, if you like to listen to my opinion.
Why should the world tolerate you having nuclear weapons and not, say, Iran?
First, again, we never admitted to have such weapons. But the very comparison is, I must say, sir, it's very insulting, and I tell you why. We suffered one Holocaust. We listened to our neighbors.
Is it because of the Holocaust that you should be allowed to have nuclear weapons?
You know what? This interview was finished now. Your attitude is so hostile, and your questions are so arrogant. I don't want to speak
Is it the
with you
case
anymore.
that...
Yuval Steinitz believes Vanunu should never have been released. He claims Vanunu still poses a security risk, a view widely held on the streets of Jerusalem.
What do you think of him?
He should have kept his mouth shut.
Should have kept his mouth shut. So do you know this fellow?
Yeah, he's a traitor, and in every other country he would hang.
Did he do the right thing?
He should burn the hell.
Mordechai Vanunu is now 50, and all he has to show for the last 18 years is a room full of books and letters from his admirers. He never married or had children.
I will not regret what I did. I regret what I lost. I could have been a good time for me, the best time to be happy and to enjoy life and to marry and have all the things that I need. Since I entered to Dimona, the direction was to this 18 years in prison.
What do you want now?
All what I want is to be free and to feel freedom. It could happen only when I leave Israel. To be free is to leave this country and to go abroad. What I demand from Israel, get me free, send me free from Israel. Let me go out of Israel.
It's interesting to see that that 60 Minutes is the same in Australia, same type of personalities and politics as 60 Minutes in America. Anyway, we'll continue, God willing, next week on the Honeypot. I've been promising you Vanunu and everything, and I think it's the best way to tell that story initially. So thanks for being here. And as you see, it's really a very serious and interesting halachic thing. There's a lot more to come. So bye-bye. Shabbat shalom.